All right, folks, here we go on this Thursday. Hold on just a moment. Okay, we're going to begin in just 6 minutes. Attorney Stephanie Murphy is going to join us. We'll review the latest situation in Rehoboth. We're also going to remember the passing of Judge Caprio and also the latest. A lot of people are asking about the situation with what happened in Newport. So we're going to begin, I should say, in just, Gian says, great, in just 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes. Great. So let me double check everything, although I think we should be fine. Now, we'll also be live again tonight. Oh, good. Okay, let me just check this. This is still, if you check depetro.com, this is still an open investigation. And I know many people were wondering about that, and it's very possible that this could lead to more arrests, is what I'm saying, by the way. Okay, when we are 5 minutes out, let me just check one thing. Here we go. Okay, I'm not sure what that is. Okay. Well, tonight at 7, this is still a very developing story, as a matter of fact. Different developments to it. There are some updates in it that I'm going to get to. We're going to start with Attorney Stephanie Murphy, of which, by the way, there's someone out there. I'm still encouraging them to contact her under the guise, go to the police before they find you. So, and you know who you are. And I sent you her number. I can't do any more for a free consultation or to get some legal advice. Now, again, it's through someone, as a matter of fact. But you've been warned. Just because you've gotten away with it this long doesn't mean you're in the clear. You know what it tells me? They're looking for you. That's what it means. All right, we're going to start in 3 minutes. We are going to start. Now, again, I encourage you. I know there's some new people that are following and watching the story. I encourage you to go to depetro.com, but we're going to first talk to Stephanie Murphy. Then we will give you the latest developments regarding this situation in Rehoboth, of which, by all accounts, I'm hearing it's still an active investigation. But I think, and I also want to caution people that as I'm talking to Attorney Stephanie Murphy, we're gonna cover and talk about the legal aspect of this, because there's different aspects to it, and so many people, I get it. It's a very emotional case, and people jump forward with this should happen or that should happen. But we're going to talk. So the nature of this is the legal aspect of the case, and I just want to caution people. I always get some email from people that they don't fully. Thank you, Eric. Don't fully understand that, and they and I just want to, I give a preface to it that some people, the nature of this discussion, we're not talking about what's morally right. Okay, I just want to, this is a legal discussion with an attorney that if I got in a jam, that's who I'm calling. So much like the friend of the person out there that I am imploring them to call her before the police find that individual. I don't know the individual, but it's a friend of that person. that the police seem anxious to talk to, but I can only do so much. Folks, what I would do is call Marin, Barrett, and Murphy, criminal defense lawyers, 50 years combined criminal defense experience. Your fight becomes their fight. Call them 401-228-8271. And remember, as I was speaking to this person, who's a source of mine, who I communicate with, she said, well, what should he say? Just say he's a friend of the show. Stephanie will pick it up from there. But you asked me, what should this person do? I implore you, and it has nothing to do with Rehoboth, by the way. It's completely separate situation. So, but at 106, we're going to start. Well, folks, good afternoon. Again, here we are live. Now, we're going to be live. The plan is live again tonight. We've been doing that at 7. So, we've kind of locked into that. But we're live right now on X, and we're live on Facebook, of which people can watch on demand. And we're also live on YouTube. So, and every Thursday at this time, we have a legal discussion with attorney Stephanie Murphy. And again, I just want to preface this. I think I've stressed it enough. We're having a legal discussion. So this isn't a matter of morals, just the legal aspect of it. All right, let's bring her on right now, folks. And there she is. It is attorney Stephanie Murphy. Good afternoon, Stephanie.
Hi, John. How are you?
I'm very well. Stephanie,
Good.
I want to start off, and we're not in a rush, and walk through. We have several legal situations we're going to talk about. But let's just start off, and I'm going to do a series of hypotheticals. But this situation, obviously, that's garnered so much national attention, and we're talking about the situation in Rehoboth. And what I think would be helpful is, because people have had all different types of questions, and why didn't the police do this, or why didn't the police do that? But let's just start off with, they get a phone call from someone that says, there's a friend of mine, former girlfriend, what have you, who is missing. And the police are talking to the person, happened to be the boyfriend in this situation, or former boyfriend, father of the child, Greg Groom, and they're taking information. Right there, what rights do let's start, what rights reasonable do the police have?
So that's a great question, John. So the police are able to ask questions to investigate. They're able to try to get a timeline, ask permission to search, everything like that. At this point, though, it would be really permission to search, permission to look at a phone, permission to look around. If the police can't get that permission and it raises to the correct legal level, then the police can go to a judge or a magistrate and ask for a search warrant, an arrest warrant, or something like that. So typically, I think in this case, there's an initial conversation. Hey, we got a call. We have concerns. Can you help us? And I think that's how the police go to somebody. Hey, someone's missing. Somebody could be hurt. Can you help us find this person? And from that point, the police can make determinations, gather, enough evidence in terms of to secure a search warrant for the property, for phones, for whatever they need.
Now, from what we understand, after they're talking to him initially for a little while, he becomes uncomfortable for whatever reason and says, that's it. I'm done talking to you. I want a lawyer. You tell me, Stephanie, at that point, unless, do the people are saying, well, the police should have raided his property right then. You tell me. I don't think a judge would sign off on that. They don't.
Yeah, I'm not sure a judge would sign off, or I'm not sure if the people are even suggesting a judge sign off. I think some of the comments I read is some people just want the police to go right in the property and conduct a search. But what I think is really hard for some people who aren't in the legal field to recognize is that everything the police do or don't do at that time is going to be scrutinized at a later point. And the last thing any police officer wants to do is have someone who was charged with murder, get off on that because of a technicality of what the police did. Defense attorneys can file a motion to suppress evidence, file a motion to suppress a full confession. And sometimes those are granted. And why those are granted is really based on police conduct and police doing something before they have the right level of either probable cause, reasonable suspicion. So the police are well trained that this isn't just an immediate, action they're taking, that it could have, serious implications down the road in a trial.
And Stephanie, and you hit on what people need to understand is the nightmare scenario would be that as a judge and they start to go through, some of the evidence and they say, hey, you didn't get this the proper way. It's going to be tossed out. And now suddenly you potentially could have a very weak case against someone. But let's talk about that individual. I'm going to role play. I'm that person. And the police say, we'd like to search your property. And maybe for various reasons. Maybe I have drugs. Maybe, I have a family member that has an outstanding warrant. Could I say to the police, no, you're not searching my property?
Absolutely. You have that right to say that. And unless they have a warrant or an emergency situation, like let's say they hear somebody screaming or they think you're going to destroy evidence and stuff like that, if those circumstances exist, then the police could possibly go in without your permission and search. But later, a defense attorney will be raising the points that it wasn't, a fair search, an illegal search. So you have absolutely the right to say, no, I don't want you to search my property. The police officer would make a determination at that time if they're going to go get a warrant or if they're going to try to do a search under one of the kind of exceptions to the warrant rule.
And I'm also curious if you could address that when police go to a judge and they're trying to get search of a property, this was a very extensive search of the property or search warrant. It is possible where the judge could say, I just don't see the evidence to grant this.
Absolutely. So not the judge will take a look at an affidavit that's submitted by a law enforcement officer. And depending on what the affidavit contains, it kind of has to connect all the dots of how you're going from, this problem to this suspected crime to why you need to search someone's property. So within the affidavit, the four corners of the affidavit, the judge has to be satisfied that, all those elements are met and that everything is connected and that is reasonable.
Now, we know what happened Tuesday night, and we know where we sit right now. But Stephanie, as I've said, this individual, the accused, the boyfriend now, clearly doesn't watch our segment because it's my understanding he went to the police station Tuesday morning, today's Thursday, 2 days ago, without an attorney and sat down with detectives from the Massachusetts State Police. Is that something you would encourage a client to do?
I would never encourage a client to do it for a variety of reasons. Even if the client says, I absolutely, I was in India at the time or something like that. What the police are looking for are inconsistencies in the statements. And from the reports that I've read, the stories changed over time. And the issue is when someone's telling the truth, the story is pretty consistent. But when you're, not telling the truth, the stories can be inconsistent. But even if somebody's telling the truth, sometimes, other things come in to influence your memory or your mind. And you might say something incorrect not because you're lying, just because maybe you don't remember something. And the police will jump on that, harp on that, immediately. And it could just be a discrepancy. Last time I saw her, she was wearing a red shirt. And then, again, at a different statement, oh, she was wearing a blue shirt. I mean, that might really just be a mistake, but the police are going to harp on that as an inconsistent statement, and it can really get you into a lot of trouble.
Yeah, and as people should note, in Massachusetts right now, the defense attorneys for Brian Walsh, they're trying to get the case tossed, saying, well, you have these troopers that made mistakes. Now, right now, the judge has not agreed with them and has said there are no mistakes, but people need to understand what a travesty that would be if someone were let go simply because they didn't follow procedure. Now, Stephanie, there's also, the police have said this is an open investigation, and there are questions that it's possible at least one of his friends may have known or learned what had happened. I'm not talking about morally, but legally. If a friend came to you and confided that they had committed an act like this, is that person potentially in legal trouble?
Are you asking as if I was an attorney, John, and somebody came to me
Yes.
because I couldn't say
No.
okay,
Just
as
as
a
a friend.
friend.
You're a friend. So you're a
So
friend of his. And I'll play it out. And he, whatever says, I can't believe this, but this happened and I buried her there. We know,
well,
we can obviously say morally that person has an obligation to say something, but what about legally?
So legally, that friend can't act in furtherance of a crime or a cover-up or a conspiracy. So if somebody does come to you and you have information, morally, you're right. That's a completely different story. But in terms of that friend getting charged or being part of this, if there's no furtherance of the crime, if there's nothing that they've done to cover up, if they're not obstructing justice, anything like that, then that's kind of where the legal standard is. But there's definitely that moral standard. It's different in different cases if you're a mandatory reporter for different crimes and stuff like that. So that's very different. But in this case, in terms of somebody might know about it, they don't have a legal obligation to go and report it. But if they know someone's being heard or being held or the crime is still being committed, then I think that changes it a little bit different. And I would be concerned about them getting roped in with conspiracy.
Now, people were surprised he pled not guilty, even though, according to the police, he was with them. They were questioning him. They let him know that they had extensive search warrants for the property. He paused, and then he ends up seemingly giving them the information they look, including drawing a map of where she's located. What happens next in this process?
Well, I'm not even sure if he tried to go in there and plead guilty, a judge would ever accept that anyways.
Okay.
So at this process, there's a lot of constitutional rights and legal rights that you have as a defendant. And some of them is, to have an attorney, to have counsel. Just because there could be a confession or, whatever, it doesn't mean that a guilty plea would be accepted by the judge. He has a right to counsel. He also has a right to different sentencing, mitigation and everything like that. So I doubt that judge would ever accept an uncounseled plea to a serious charge, especially something like this, and especially right away. You almost automatically enter a plea of not guilty. And down the road, somebody might not be fighting the charge, but they want the opportunity to speak to an attorney, to get, mitigation, to get sentencing. You just don't want to walk in and plead guilty and just hope for the best.
Now, one final question, unless you want to share something that stuck out to you, but as of right now, this doesn't seem to be someone of means. It doesn't strike me, it's possible, but doesn't strike me as someone that's prepared to go to trial. People are asking, could he be charged for the murder of two since she was pregnant?
So I'm not familiar with the law in terms of that. I don't believe so. That would be what my gut says. But there's definitely other crimes for like an unborn child and stuff like that. But whether it's a murder, I'm not sure about the law up there. But there's definitely other crimes and stuff like that can be, added in terms of other charges that you can be faced with.
Stephanie, does this strike you as this will probably be pled out? This will not go to a trial?
Absolutely. I mean, most of the cases are, very rarely does a case go to trial. And even as we saw in like the Brian Kohlberger case and stuff like that, it might get set up for trial and kind of teed up for trial, but really it comes down to a sentencing issue a lot of times. So a lot of them, most cases, do resolve itself. And it's not really a plea negotiation. It's just, what is the appropriate sentence and will the defendant accept it?
Now, there was another high-profile legal situation. Started last Friday, they released a statement. And then, we all saw it was widely seen, the Newport police body cam video. I want to start off with, and there's discrepancies, but from what I've learned, that a small group of people are attempting to enter Clark Cookhouse and in Newport. And for whatever reason, it's very possible that they suspected the individual one of them was intoxicated, or maybe, they thought they had a reservation, whatever it may be. But the restaurant manager, maitre d' owner, they call the police and they say, we want these people, so forth, removed. Let's start off just with that, where a restaurant basically is refusing a group entrance into the restaurant.
Well, yeah. So a restaurant owner or restaurant, you don't want people in your restaurant who are unsafe or going to cause a disturbance in the restaurant. So if there's a reason, a restaurant owner, someone who works there can absolutely ask somebody to leave and everything like that. And at that point, it's up to the owner or the worker to keep everyone safe in that restaurant and to make sure people coming into the restaurant are safe. So it's more of like a civil liability premise that, you can allow people into your establishment or, not. It can't be for a discriminatory purpose or anything like that.
Right.
You can absolutely, keep your place safe and keep everybody inside your place safe.
Now, in this particular situation, obviously, there's been some second guessing. The Attorney General, Peter Neronha, has spoken out and said, he didn't like what he saw. And then you had the other individual. But then you have some people saying it was unnecessary. I've seen it. unnecessary to detain them in that way and bring them up. Um, as far as the police, what legal, did the police, did they, in your opinion, did they jump the gun? Could they have moved it along? What could have changed the dynamic in this scenario?
I think a couple things could have changed. I don't really know what the police knew at the time that they responded. So I think that's very important. What the police knew, if the officer with the body cam footage was the first one on scene. I'm not really sure if there's other police officers who may have arrived first, tried to, de-escalate the situation. But I think most police officers always do try to de-escalate. I don't truly believe there's many police officers who want to arrest people, especially in this situation. So it really kind of, depends on what the police officer knows when they arrive, what they see when they arrive. And, I do truly believe that police officers want to de-escalate a situation. And, I'm sure this officer tried to do that in the way that he thought was appropriate with the other police officers.
Obviously, well, you tell me. I mean, if anything, it's more embarrassing than anything else. It's not really a crime. And then the interaction of the second female, got a little more dramatic with the police. But how will this be resolved legally?
Well, I hope legally that there's no charges. I think there's a lot of legal arguments as a defense attorney in terms of some of the charges. I just really think that maybe this was a situation where the police just couldn't de-escalate the situation and, removed everyone from the scene in order to de-escalate it. But hopefully all the charges will get dismissed. And it's unfortunate that all the press and everything like that, because these are, individuals, families with jobs and everything like that. But at the same time, the police did pursue charges and, we'll see what happens in Newport.
And one final question, let's just say you want to, I'm asking you for advice. You have some clients or people, they've been out, they're on vacation, nothing wrong with that. Maybe they've been overserved, caught an aggressive bartender, what have you. They're denied entrance into somewhere and then the police show up. What would you advise them at that point to do?
Well, I think anytime the police show up, I think you kind of have to go into the mode of, hey, let's walk away.
Yeah.
Maybe the restaurant was wrong in not allowing them to come in. I'm not really sure. But once the police arrive, it's really not the time to start battling with the police. My advice is, walk away. And if you feel like you were discriminated against or treated poorly, there's civil remedies for that you can contact the restaurant owner. You can file a complaint. There's ways to do that. But the last thing I want anyone to do is to ever get arrested. So, or even if you're with a loved one and you see this going on, grab them and have them walk away. It's just not worth it, especially with this day and age with body cam footage. I mean, this would have been not a case at all, but for really
Right.
the body cam footage. So it's what we always come back to, John, about everything's recorded, everything's there. You have to be really, really, really careful. And in that moment, you might not really realizing, things that are being said or things that are being done. And you just have to be, really, really careful with body cam footage and security footage and people's cell phones too, recording an incident, maybe even when the police aren't there. So I think you have to kind of de-escalate, walk away and not worry about it.
Yeah, the police were seemingly just trying to get them to walk away. Now, Stephanie, I also want to mention with the passing of Judge Frank Caprio, very well known, obviously, even international, national. But what about his impact and just his legacy? And he always seemed to try to implement showing kindness in the court.
I think his legacy is one of just that, John, showing kindness, listening to stories. Everyone has bad days, everyone has problems, and he really, really listened to that. And he didn't define one person or one violation, by one bad day that somebody was having. I think it's a great lesson that, you don't know what other people's problems are. You know yours, but everyone else is struggling too. Some more than others and some worse on other days. And he just showed compassion and kindness and just even asking people, how are they doing? Asking about past, history, employment, service. He really showed kindness and empathy. And I think sometimes that's lacking in the formal judicial world. So it's great to see his legacy.
One of the things early on when I would see court in Providence that I did like is he would instruct them that to say either yes, sir, like they'd say yes, he'd say yes, sir, or yes, Your Honor. He would implement and try to explain to them in a nice way, but that there's a certain protocol in court and that they need to follow that. Folks, it's time for Murphy's Law. This is a story that attorney Stephanie Murphy has found. Stephanie, what have you had for us this week?
So I'm interested in learning more about the Menendez brothers and their parole hearings that's starting. I think that's really fascinating. The youthful offender, everything that's kind of going on with new research and legislative movements towards youthful offenders. When a crime's committed, when you're a certain age, what should that punishment be? And when should that punishment be revisited? I think it's a very interesting case and a very interesting issue. And it's just something I think, would have long-term impacts and effects on the hundreds of thousands of inmates who are imprisoned as youthful offenders.
Folks, again, it is attorney Stephanie Murphy. Stephanie, excellent job as always, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Thanks, John.
Okay, there it is, folks. Attorney Stephanie Murphy. Now I will get to some of the latest. Again, I want to be very clear. We're not talking morally, talking legally. That's why I like to have her on. Remember, and if you run into a legal jam, if you get a DUI, call her 401-228-8271. Let me stay on schedule. Good afternoon, Diane. This portion of our program is brought to you by Propane Plus. Remember, they're based in Rehoboth. Call them. Call Propane Plus today, 508-252-3359 for Propane Plus. And then you also have the Rhode Island office that they have. You can call them at 401-885-4209. Propane Plus. What I like, residential or commercial, heating or cooling, call the Johnson family. 3 generations, the best. Call them. And good afternoon to Diane. 508-252-3359 or 401-885-4209 for Propane Plus. Now, I also want to just stay on schedule. Don't forget, fresh vegetables right now, PR Landscape Materials and Garden Center. They have remarkable fresh vegetables. If you're having some kind of a, cookout, or you just want to enjoy it on the way back from the beaches, they have delicious, fresh summer corn. I share their Facebook page. Stop in and see them. Rhode Island's #1. They're a full-scale nursery, but they're the #1 garden center in Rhode Island. 3688 Quaker Lane in North Kingstown. Stop in and see them. It's PR Landscape Materials and Garden Center. Now, I do want to address, so as many of you know, she is great. Isn't that great, Gail? She's fantastic. I'm telling you, someone contacted me like in the last 2 weeks and said, my buddy got a DUI. Who's that attorney you talked to? And I gave him the number. Yeah, it's sad on the judge. I do want to talk about Rehoboth, though, because in a couple of things. The #1, I have various sources, and we have been right basically every step of the way on this. However, when they discovered the body, I spoke to someone afterwards who believed they saw some items that looked like they had been burned. And so they thought that he had, Greg now, the boyfriend, that he had in fact burned the body. What we have now learned is he actually burned his clothes. So I just wanted to correct that. We have been on this thing really from jump, as Higgy would say. But again, it doesn't take away. Yes, he beat her, assaulted her, stabbed her 3 times, buried her on the property. How about that? Went in to talk to the Massachusetts State Police detectives without an attorney as she's buried in the property. But the sources that I spoke to, did they see something that was burned? Yes. But apparently he burned his clothes and was treating it that way. Now, I want to touch on, this is, and I haven't heard anyone else talk about this, but we do have it. If you log on to DePietro.com, this is an active investigation. And that's why I wanted to ask Attorney Murphy about that. This is an active investigation. So as much as people have been questioning, did he act alone. I have, and I'm going to wait, but it is my belief that it's possible he shared what happened with one of his friends. So I'm not fully reporting that, but I think it's interesting that the Rehoboth police and the Massachusetts State Police are both saying that they believe this is they're saying, excuse me, this is an active investigation. So now I've heard that it's very possible a male friend of his, not female, but a male friend of his made reference to someone, threatening them, and even mentioned something akin to, I'll put you buried where Kylie's buried. So does that mean that, is that possible that they actually, did he share with one of his friends that was, no, I said it was a male friend. So I can see we have, I don't know who that is, but I'm just taking care of it. Nope, male friend. I have the name. I'm not going to say it. I can't criticize my sources. As you know, since this has broken, we have been right there. But you just heard something. Thank you, Janet Dwyer. You just heard something that I think could come into play. Now, some of you may not like it. And Sean is great. I don't know if Sean is there. So, well, but I'm hearing it's a male friend. And people have asked about the grandparents. And people have asked about the brother. I don't know. The whole thing is odd. Initially people started to jump off to that. And I kind of want to and we will let the Massachusetts State Police and the Rehoboth Police look into this. But as I mentioned, only in a movie, I mean, this whole business of, if you've ever had to plant something, it's not as easy as it looks. I mean, I remember becoming a homeowner and then getting some things that I wanted to plant. It takes a while. It takes a while to dig a 3-foot hole, let alone a 5-foot hole. So in order to, and I don't mean to be coarse here, but yeah. Well, Kylie was 6 feet tall. And as the police said, very heavy set, weighed more than him. I admit, I am starting to wonder. And at the very least, it's one thing that maybe they didn't help him, but there is starting to be evidence that I'm working on, and I have spoke with someone that someone referenced her buried there, and they referenced it last Friday, and they made a threat to someone on social media about it. I'm still working it out. I'm not ready to post it, but I am hearing that. And I found it very odd. Those of you that watched us live last night, and the girl who was friendly with them, the father came on and it was, stop talking about it. And she didn't know anything and she had nothing to do with it. And you guys tell me, I thought it was a little bit of Shakespeare, thou protest too much. He was coming off as someone that seemed kind of rattled. And all he kept saying was, you don't have the facts. But then he wouldn't say what facts. And then, folks, many times, again, I don't try to come off. Thank you very much. Look at that. Good. I like that. I don't try to come off as though, an expert, but when you talk with experts as much as, thank you very much, as much as I do, you certainly learn about it. But I asked a question, and that was, the individual that we were referencing, did she speak to the police? And he then wouldn't answer that question, but I know what the answer is. Did that person also hire an attorney or have an attorney or use an attorney? Again, there's nothing wrong. I just had an attorney on. But I think anyone that was on last night, it was uncomfortable, was like, stop talking about it. Stop talking about it. When we've heard that he, meaning Greg Groom, the boyfriend killer, that it's very possible that he had set his sights on someone else. He's 22. I can't stand the people that act as though like that's impossible that could have happened. So why is that impossible? It doesn't put any onus. There's the three of them. It's Kylie, her friend, and then the boyfriend, the night that they were going to their prom. I mean, I just, the people that tried immediately, and her father in the black, he was the one in the chat last night. Stop talking about it. You people have no idea what you're talking about. Well, she knew him. She knew him. And Kylie suspected something was going on. So, and if the one in the black had just started a relationship with him because he said that he was done with Kylie, that's not criminal. It happens all the time. But the act of the way the individual was going about it, for those of you that saw it, it was a little over the top. I mean, I wouldn't say anything, right? I mean, why? I'm always, when people are, it's not that they don't want to talk about it, they don't want anyone talking about it. I admit I get a little suspicious when that type of thing happens. I want to talk about what could happen here. And I know some people aren't going to like it, but I also want to remind you about ServPro. Folks, ServPro Providence, disaster strikes, flood, fire. Remember, you have fire, then you have smoke damage, maybe mold. ServPro of Providence, they're available 24/7. They're fast, they're thorough, they're professional. 401-941-5500. When disaster strikes, everything changes. If you have a fire in your building, your commercial building, your home, you can't just, okay, let's get on with our day or week. You got to deal with a disaster. ServPro Providence, this is who I would call. God forbid, if I ever had a fire, I'd call ServPro Providence, 401-941-5500. They have the expertise, they're professionals, they'll handle it. Or if you have mold, that can happen. Someone I know recently found out house they were renting had mold. Landlord said, just see if you can take care of it. I said, call ServPro of Providence, 401-941-5500. Now, this is the part that a lot of people may not like, but it's very possible that they may go to him and drop the charge on the unborn infant in order to get him to agree in the guilty plea. I'm not definitely saying that's happening, but they don't want this to go to trial. As Stephanie Murphy said, most cases do not go to trial. So most cases do not go to trial. I believe, we'll see, but I would believe it's going to be life in prison without parole. I believe that's what it could be. So, but, in Rhode Island, there's no such thing as life in prison. They get out. And actually, Massachusetts is pretty much the same. He's 22. He could get out 30 years. He could get out when he's 52. Or he could get out before he's 50. It's very possible. And as I've mentioned, we have to deal in reality. If that bothers you, I didn't make the rule. But this is Massachusetts you're talking about. And how it went so off course with the judicial system is beyond me. Remember, Massachusetts allows people to get away with murder if you can game the system. I don't think he's going to game the system. So, but I don't know. No, that sounds very light. That sounds very light. but possible, Jackie. I don't know. 15 years, second-degree murder. I think you're going to get more than that. And it sure sounds like first-degree murder. No, that was the act and then what happened afterwards. I think he catches a first-degree murder charge. But they may not do life without parole. We still have a long way to go. I don't know. He may see the light of day. Yeah, Massachusetts. Governor Healy recently posted, Massachusetts is the best place to live. I spent 3 months in a courtroom and listen, I have friends in Massachusetts. I like Massachusetts. I'm going to cover the Walsh trial. But the justice system in Mass is woked out. It is. And they allow people to manipulate the system and get away with things. So a judge could say he's only 22, 25 years. The police, Rehoboth Police, Massachusetts State Police, have no legal recourse. Hey, maybe Karen Reed's attorneys come in. They grab him and they start the whole, he was framed, someone else did it, poison the jury pool, and the next thing you know, right, he gets off. You don't know. I mean, after what happened in June with the Fall River accent and the week after Karen Reed and the week pour, anything is possible because that was an airtight case. It was. If you take out all the foolishness, it absolutely was. She confessed. I'm not going to go into it, but she confessed. She was telling people. Folks, this portion of the program, Kids Club on the Pike. Now remember, Kids Club on the Pike. If you have a child or grandchild, nope, I meant to remove that. Child or grandchild. Remember, Kids Club on the Pike. They are located right off of 295, right on the Cranston-Johnston line. And right now they still, next week is still summer. They are still they're wrapping up their summer camp at Kids Club on the Pike. I was out there. I saw the kids the other day. They're having a blast. But it's perfect for maybe you want to have an end of summer party for a bunch of youth. It's also perfect for birthday party or maybe a team. Maybe you had a team that you want to have. It's designed for children and it's safe. I've told the story. A friend of mine, they were going to bring a bunch of 8 or 9-year-olds to Dave & Buster's at Providence Place Mall. I said, really? That's pretty adventurous. One of the kids got robbed. 9 years old, got robbed on the way into Dave & Buster's. I said, you should have had it at Kids Club on the Pike. Birthday party venue, before and after school care, preschool. Call them. Are you looking for different preschools? They're great. 401-443-5336 for Kids Club on the Pike. Yeah, to be honest with you, after what happened, after we watched, I don't think you can rule out the fact that the Massachusetts justice system, and to me, it's not the police. The Massachusetts State Police, the Rehoboth Police, it's still an open investigation. It sure sounds as though more people knew. And he may rat some friends out or some people out in order to try to get a lesser sentence. We don't know that. This will be a plea agreement. Maybe it will be. Is it possible 25 years, no parole? Possible. But, all you need is the conspiracy crowd to enter and start tossing around that, it was the police. I said the other night, there was one of their crew already started saying, I don't know about this. I wonder if the police, buried her there. She's so moronic. It's sanity. Of course it's insane. We can't read. So, you don't know with that crowd. But I think this is just going to go. This, to me, seems very solid. And they also haven't revealed everything that they have. Not yet. They'll get to that. That's right. No hag bags. That is correct. No, you don't have to. It is very, very sad. I think we've already explained that. If they had the text, why did it take so long to get a search warrant? Again, it's not the police, it's the judges. It's the judges in Massachusetts. It's very possible that they went to a judge. Now, remember, all of the judges in Massachusetts come from Beacon Hill, which means what? It means they're all Democrats. They're all Democrats. So he is not insane. No. So, no. I've heard that. Someone is mentioning that. There's nothing really dramatic with that audio, other than, as I have mentioned, the business where I know, but it's not your audio. It's not your audio, Vincent. So that's someone else's audio. And right now, I think that's a big headline. And I think the part about that is you hear them talking. There is audio that's making the rounds on social media of the two of them talking and her talking. But other than the biggest thing that stands out to me in that conversation is when he says, I want my life back. But you don't hear, other than that, it's being sold as something very dramatic. So I would appreciate if people that are watching would stop trying to build that up bigger than what it actually is. So there's enough of that. It's kind of like the people that were going around. I don't even want to get into it. I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of the whole free gun read stuff. The people of saying, did you hear? Like there's text messages between Jen McCabe and her daughter. Yeah, can you imagine that? A mother texting her daughter. It's so moronic. I am not entering into that zone. I heard the audio. I don't find it to be the big blockbuster. The text about if something happened to me, it was Greg. Okay, that's something. But at the same time, quite frankly, I was told that she was a big drama queen. I did hear that. To be honest with you, no, I heard that. I was told that by friends and family of her that she was a big drama queen. So you could see with someone, maybe that's not the first time she sent that. So we don't know that. I see no reason. If I thought there was one reason to question anything done by the Rehoboth Police and Massachusetts State Police, I would say so. Anyone, this is if you move too fast, then they come up with the whole defense of they didn't even look at anybody else. And then they do the right amount of time and people start saying they didn't move fast enough. Do you understand there's a certain crowd, you can't please them? Stephanie Murphy just laid out there's a rhyme and reason to doing this. And they want to make sure that nothing gets kicked. So I think that was pretty much on the money. Folks, this portion of the program is brought to you by Arch Design Builders. They specialize in residential design. Call them today, 401-207-4124. 401-207-4124. Maybe it's time for a new kitchen or bathroom or a basement or a deck or a special project. Arch Design Builders, they're the best. Ed and Roxanne. Custom build, 5-star high end. Call them, set up that meeting. 401-218-9707. 401-218-9707 for Arch Design Builders. And I share their social media. So there is, for those that want to hear her voice, there's TikToks of Kylie. There's TikToks, there's social media videos of the two of them. There, for those that want to hear that and see that, it is out there. I was told that sometimes, and I'm not speaking ill of the dead, like everyone else, you feel terrible about what happened to this young girl, feel terrible for her family, her potential future brother-in-law, also her sisters that I've spoken to, Kitty and Faith. No, we feel terrible about it. But this, I don't, this was This is just, there's nothing, this is one of those situations, there's nothing good about this particular situation. And, I feel bad. Don't forget the vigil's coming up Saturday night. I've been sharing information about that. And I feel terrible that the family is not only dealing with this, but they were interacting with him. They were trying to be hopeful. For those of you that saw Sunday night, we had one of the sisters on, and they were still hopeful that she was alive. We had the friend on, Mama Bear's daughter, who was saying, if I know Kylie, she's hiding somewhere and she's fine. She just remember, that was her friend. I think that was Friday night or Saturday night. She's fine. She just wants attention. Well, that was not the case, obviously. Yeah, the whole situation. But it goes down to him. It goes down to him. No, I am not. I have a family obligation on Saturday. So that's right. And some of the things, anything that was being said, that's right. The vigil will be 7:00. That's what it was. Ron Marshall is exactly right. I found the most telling. And some people, like when we step back for a moment, to me, it was very obvious he was the obvious one. That's why we drilled down on the fact that he didn't drive. But his comment of, I want my life back. And she, from what we understand, and again, no one deserves this. He had a lot of options. Break up with her, and then he was going to have to find a way to support the child. Other people have done it. There were different options. That wasn't one of them. So, but he made the decision to do this. This falls on that person. That person. It is absolutely unfair, and it's inaccurate to try to blame it into anyone else. But that said, I have heard that there were people. Yeah, that's right. I have heard there were people who, it's very possible. Couple things. I've heard a friend of his, male friend, knew about it after the fact, and made reference to it. A male friend of his made reference, threatening someone akin to, you'll be buried where Kylie's buried. I mean, I have that. And the person, to their credit, went to the police with it. That was the Friday into the Saturday. So it's very possible. He's odd. He's very odd. So that's not exactly right, Jocelyn. It's possible. It's possible. Most states, that would be true. But again, I want to remind people, this is Massachusetts. Judges are very difficult in Massachusetts. If people want to be angry at anyone, it's not the police. I sat in a courtroom where a judge sat there and let the defense attorneys continually lie to her and lie in open court. And she let them get away with it. Absolutely. Other states would have been bounced. Other states, you go to Ohio, you go to New Jersey, you go to Florida, you go to Texas, you go to Tennessee, the Carolinas, most states, if you're any attorney and you lie to the judge, you're bounced off the case. Massachusetts, it's the judges. Massachusetts has a problem with judges. You can't blame the police. So those that are saying they should have gone there, for what? It's very possible that they went to the judge and the judge would not grant them a search warrant. Now, let's just be realistic here, though. It wouldn't have made a difference. I don't want people to act as though her life could have been saved. So, I mean, that wouldn't have happened. It's not like when we were searching for Linda, that was every moment counted. But if you're upset about the system, the people to be upset with are the judges in Mass. And as I said, I sat there. The stuff that they let the defense attorneys get away with is ridiculous. And it's not allowed in other states. Hey, you had a judge in Massachusetts. They had an illegal. ICE was at the courthouse, and the judge allowed the illegal to sneak out down back stairways to escape out of the courthouse. Insanity. Again, the system is up for grabs. When you're a judge and you allow criminal defense attorneys to lie in your courtroom and you let them get away with it with no punishment, listen, everything's up for grabs. The police can only do so much. So in this case, they bring it to a judge, show the judge the text, right? If anything happened to me, it was Greg. And the judge shrugs it off. Boyfriend seems odd. No. He lives on 26 acres. No. What are the police supposed to do? So do I think that they're going to charge a friend? Again, the police could try, but as long as you have liberal, progressive judges in not just Massachusetts, Rhode Island, but definitely Massachusetts, the Massachusetts justice system is totally broken. I mean, I think broken beyond repair. And quite frankly, it has really soured me on the state of Massachusetts. Because I obviously, like everyone else, I have friends in Mass and enjoy going to Mass and Boston and so forth. Like I said, there are people, it's crazy. There are people rooting for Brian Walsh to get off. They're rooting for Brian Walsh to get away with taking the life of his wife, Anna Walsh. And there are people nodding, yeah, that's right. Yeah, teach the cops a lesson. Insanity. You mark my words. There will be people showing up. Not yet, but they'll emerge to defend him. You watch. They will. Folks, this portion of our program, of course it's crazy. Of course it's insane. But this is Massachusetts we're talking about. You know, that wouldn't even go on in Rhode Island. This portion of the program is brought to you by J. Perry Paving. Free estimate any project, and especially if you're a veteran or your family's a veteran or you're related to a veteran, J. Perry Paving, 401-732-1730. 401-732-1730, letter J, J. Perry Paving. Licensed and insured. If you're a veteran, they have a great package for veteran, or maybe your mom is, or your dad, or your grandmother, or your son, or daughter, or boyfriend, or girlfriend. Letter J, J. Perry Paving, 401-732-1730. And if you're a veteran, and maybe there's another veteran on your street, two's better than one. Contact J. Perry Paving today, 401-732-1730. We'll be live tonight. Unless something happens this afternoon. I am still working this case. This is still open investigation. I think if it sure sounds like one of his friends, my information, one of his friends knew that something had happened and referenced it, I think there should be charges. But for those that you watch, yeah, Democrat, unfortunately, is the same. Connecticut's the same way. So that's right, Chuck. You know, here's the thing. If there are some of the people out there, you watch, it's not going to happen right away, but he will have defenders. You know, the other night, when someone showed that to me, that there's already some of these YouTube people and some of the others, and they're already trying to say, I bet the police framed this guy, and boom, boom, boom. And you watch. Rhode Island, you saw, I don't believe that would happen in Rhode Island. But Mass is a different animal right now. Massachusetts has been totally overtaken by progressives. And so it's very, very possible. If you're listening to the radio, stay tuned for the 2:00 news. Everyone else, now, if something significant happens, we'll be back this afternoon. Otherwise, we'll be back tonight. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget, the vigil is Saturday night at 7:00.